Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in. It's Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live, the podcast series, as we continue through the week, sitting alongside, as I always do on Tuesdays, with Mike D'Ambrosio. Good to have you back, Mike.
Good to be on, and unfortunately not alongside you in studio today, but calling in, and this is fun. Still going to be fun.
Well,
it's all good.
That's the way to make the best use of technology, right? Here we go.
That's right. That's right.
So we got a great topic for you today. I think it's very, very relevant to the market. Mike and I are going to talk about, and that is how to best prepare for a purchase in a highly competitive market. Kind of number one. And number two, how creative are you willing to get? And there's a lot of different things I think you might be surprised, may or may not be, that you could do to make that offer happen. But even more importantly, how do you really prepare yourself? So before we jump into that, just a reminder, if you have any needs on the real estate side, you need someone to represent you on the buy, sell advice, contact Mike. You could reach him text or phone, 408-630-0101, or you could email him, Mike at reradiolive.com. On the financing side, if you need any help on a purchase, you need to refinance, any information or consultation on financing, I can help you with that, 408-838-9060, or you could email me, Joe at reradiolive.com. All right, let's jump into this topic that I think is really relevant to the marketplace right now. Low inventory, people really itching to buy. What do you do when you find that house? So maybe, Mike, why don't you start, if you can, on your side, since you're the expert at this, and kind of talk through, if you will, explain, A to Z, the best kind of position you could put someone in place to, in preparing for an offer. And then you and I could kind of have some exchange after that about, what happens if they need to sell their house, they can't sell their house, or, other ways to use assets to leverage, et cetera. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the most important, we talk about this on the show a lot. I mean, the most important thing is to work with a good real estate professional, mortgage professional. If you find a real estate professional and they don't walk you through what I typically do with new buyers is I meet with them before we do anything. I have them contact you, get pre-approved, and I meet with them and I talk to them about a couple of things. I talk to them about, myself, the company, what I can offer to them. I talk to them about the market, which is probably the most important part of the conversation, so they fully understand, especially in the areas they're looking at, what they're getting themselves into. Mm-hmm. So we talk about the market. We talk about the sales process, which is super important. In California, it's a pretty complicated process that you have to go through. And there's a lot of, steps to it. So we talk about that. And then we talk about what their wants and needs are and what their dream home is going to look like. So it's kind of a 5-part initial meeting consultation. And then from there, you're ready to rock and roll and you go out and do it. And so I think the reason I'm telling you that is you really need to understand what the whole process looks like and set the table for what they're going to be getting into. And then from there, when you start looking at property, going to show property, the whole offer process is a whole, it's not like it used to be when I first started back in 2008 when there was a plethora of inventory on the market and you could pretty much choose whatever the heck you wanted. Mm-hmm. It's a lot different now. There's a whole system, at least I have as a real estate professional, and everyone's got their own different way of doing it, but there's a whole system you got to do in order to try to put yourself in the best situation to win an offer, especially if you want the property badly, And right. So there's a lot of upfront legwork that's needed to be done, whereas it hasn't been that way in the past. You have to look at the disclosures. You have to look at the reports ahead of time. You have to run the analysis on the comps and the comparable sales data. You have to have a good agent that knows a lot of other agents so they can butter up that listing agent in order to help you to win. And then, there's all of that. And then you have to get into the actual offer and how you can get creative in the offer with contingencies and appraisal contingency and loan contingency. And we can talk a little bit more about that, and you can too. And then there's that offer. And then there's, then getting the full pre-approval, having the proof of funds, having the pre-approval letter, having a good lender like Joe, having Joe call the listing agent and kiss their a little bit and tell them, and tell them how great the borrowers are. I mean, this is all a part of it now. It's a much more in-depth process than it used to be in the past.
Yeah. Well said. What do you do? And we're going to bounce around talking because all this stuff is really critical and important. So what do you do, Mike, when you're meeting with this client that's getting ready to buy and they're excited and they're ready to go and oh yeah, there's this little thing on the side that's called, well, I'm not sure if I could buy a house unless I sell my house.
Right. Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast, Joe. No, that's a whole nother thing, and then you got to get into the selling side and in the market, and then that's a whole nother presentation.
Right.
With the listing presentation, the marketing presentation, the comps, the process on that, getting the house ready. But we say it all the time, if you're thinking about doing this anytime soon, you got to get started sooner than later. That way you can set out a game plan, especially if you're going to sell your house. But on the topic of in a competitive market like this, it's especially if you're going to sell here and buy here. And what I mean by here is Silicon Valley. It's not going to be easy. Let me just say that. Unless you're willing to go all out on the buy side and really put your best foot forward, it is not an easy process to get an offer accepted contingent on the sale of your property, because you're competing with other people that are going to basically have no contingencies or low contingencies, essentially less outs, that the seller looks at it as less out clauses. So it's difficult.
Right.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. So let's walk through some of the different options, and let's say, you just really took us through the preparation, what needs to take place, building the foundation, your due diligence to give yourself the best chance at the offer, which you do, as well as anyone. And then, this is obviously, if you don't have a house to sell or you already have the money and, it's not an issue, then, it's certainly going to make your, offer and presentation a lot more strong. But let's talk a little bit, Mike, which we run into a lot, and I think sounds like what's going to start happening again with this low inventory is, the person that is looking, but, they don't want to put their house on the market yet, even though, you would advise them, hey, if you're serious, you should probably do it. But, they're nervous about that because, what if they can't find anything for 6 months, or what if, so it's a dilemma. It's a tough deal. So let's talk a little bit about the person who is very, very serious and says, Mike, Joe, I want to be able to be ready to pull the trigger to buy a house. Here's the challenge. I don't want to have to sell my house initially in order to buy the next house. So what do I do? What do I do? So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think we're going to find a lot of people in this predicament.
Yeah, I would say the first thing I say is go talk to Joe and see if you can qualify. People are afraid to go talk to a lender,
right,
and really figure out if they can afford to do it without selling their house. That's got to be the first step. And a lot of people would might be surprised that they could qualify to purchase additionally to the payment they already have in their house. So if that's the case, you're golden. Then if you qualify and you qualify for the amount you're looking for to make your move, then great. And honestly, as an agent, I'm a salesperson, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really try to encourage people to keep as much real estate as they can. I'm not looking for the next sale, the next listing. I rarely encourage people to sell property if they're buying another property and they're moving out of it. I think, I know real estate is the key to accumulating wealth, or one of the huge keys to that. So if I can encourage them as much to keep it as a rental or do something else with it, I'm going to do that.
Right.
But sometimes it just doesn't lend to that scenario.
All right, so what we're going to do is Mike and I are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. You're going to want to listen to the second part, because now we're going to get into details exactly how do you frame an offer knowing that you have not sold your house and you're not going to sell your house. You might be surprised some of the options that are available to you. We'll be back with you in just a minute.
For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
Hi, this is Joe Kuchera, host of Real Estate Radio Live and Bay Area Mortgage Planner. In addition to being your home financing expert, please remember you could always contact me for other trusted advisors such as realtors, financial planners, and CPAs. Please feel free to contact me at 408-838-9060. That's 408-838-9060, or email joe at RERadiolive.com, or visit my website at RERadiolive.com for more details.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's topic or guests, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome back in. Joe Kuchera alongside Mike D'Ambrosio via the technology we're using here, Skype. We have Mike calling in via Skype. We're having our show that we do every Tuesday, and thanks again for tuning in. The topic today is how to best prepare for a purchase in a highly competitive market, and then the second part now is, exactly how creative are you willing to get? And Mike covered the first part of the show, covered well about how do you best prepare yourself, what do you need to do, the steps to take, get pre-approved to make your offer strong. We covered that and really in a pretty good place. Now we're going to get into a situation where I think more and more people are going to be finding themselves, if they're willing to be creative, and just how creative is, what do you do when you want to go out, make an offer on a home, and you want to try to do it without selling your home? So we're going to walk through that, a few different options, and we're going to talk about that. So the first thing that is probably the simplest way to do it, if I get someone's income and asset documentation and I look at it quickly and we determine, well, this is not a problem. I mean, this person, they make enough income. Technically, they could go out and buy a house. They have the down payment in this account. They could go out and buy a house and we're good to go. That's the dream situation we all look for. It doesn't always happen that way.
Right, yeah,
it doesn't always happen that way.
No, it does not. In fact, it's probably less often than not, I would say.
Yeah, so as Mike knows, it doesn't happen that often. It's great if it does. So that's one. Okay, not a big deal if that comes up. Here's what typically happens. You look at their financials and the assets, and you figure out, okay, well, technically this person really can't go out and secure another, let's call it $800,000 loan by keeping the current home they have. So how do we position them? One way is, do they have other assets they could leverage? Do they have maybe temporarily they could put down more money? And I'll tell you an example of some of the things that you could get pretty creative with. Let's say that they have a fair amount of money in even a 401k or investment assets, or even qualified IRAs. You could pull money out of qualified IRAs, and I think is it 60 or 90 days, I forget. So the idea is that if you put the money back within that 60 to 90 day period, you're not penalized tax-wise. So I've seen that happen before. People will say, you really can't qualify for an $800,000 loan, but you could qualify for a $600,000 loan. So by keeping your home. So they'll draw out $200,000 additional funds, knowing that they have 90 days to pay that back without penalty. So there's, again, it's maybe not a highly desirable way, but that's another way to make something like this happen. The other thing is, we've talked about this before, bridge financing. A lot of people are not familiar with this, but I do think that it's going to become more into play, and this is why Mike and I want to try to educate, the community out there. So what's a bridge loan look like? And let's say, for instance, you have a home that you own, and it's worth $1 million, and you owe $200,000 or $300,000 on it, and then you want the ability to go buy another home, and you just don't quite have the income to make that happen, or maybe the down payment. You technically need the down payment. Believe it or not, this is a little difficult to describe via radio without graphs and designs and stuff. But if you have good equity in your exiting property, in this situation the person does, there are private investors that will loan you literally the entire purchase amount or the majority of that amount, Mike, and execute the purchase of that property based on the equity, and they'll even look at assets and other properties. For instance, Mike, let's say you don't have much equity in your exiting property, but let's say you have a vacation home in Tahoe that's worth $2 million, and you owe a couple $100,000 on that. They could actually leverage a bridge loan, help you make this purchase. They could purchase, execute the purchase now. So those things are viable. They could really happen. We do them. Here's the thing you have to understand is that it's an expensive venture when you do bridge financing. You're typically looking at least 2 points. So again, for easy math, if you're borrowing $800,000, that's going to be $16,000 just in origination fees. And then you're gonna pay somewhere probably between 8 and 9% interest, but it's interest only on that money. Now, I'm not sure the 8 and the 9% is that big of a deal if you're going to only hold that loan for a month or so or 2 months, but it's still $16,000, and maybe let's call it paying 40 to 50% premium on the rate, Mike. So in this situation, let's say, I think what a person needs to do is that what I'd really educate them and consult them on is this house or is this transaction worth it, knowing that it's going to cost you about another $20,000 to $25,000 to make it happen, right?
I think that's the main thing you got to consider, and I think if it comes down to someone needing to use bridge financing, I mean, when it gets to that point and they really want this house or they, whatever property they're really going after, if this is their forever home or their, what's another 15 or, I mean, it's easy for me to say because I'm not spending the money, but 15 or 20 grand, over 30 plus years you might live at this place. It's probably worth the investment, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree. Again, you're right. I mean, it's not our money, but this is why it's so important. Mike alluded to this early in the show, and we'll talk about it over and over and over again. Hire the right people, have the right team, because in a market like this, the people that treat their business like a business and make this for a living like Mike and I are going to be your best shot at something like this. I'm not saying it just to say it. It's true. And I had Mike the other day, I mentioned this, and it's worth mentioning it again for you because you're in that. The staggering statistic on the real estate side is roughly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, roughly about 8% of the realtors do 90+% of the business.
Yeah,
so
true.
So Mike is in that 8%. So what you guys need to understand, the listeners out there, is that this is a good number to keep in your head. If you're getting ready to hire a realtor, hire the realtor. Ask the question. Seriously, find out what kind of business they do, how they treat their business. Go to their website. Do they use video? Do they use technology? Do they, how do they communicate? There's a lot to that, and being successful doesn't always measure a degree of success in terms of the transaction, but it does help. And my point behind this is that there's a reason why these 8% are so successful. It's because they do typically what it takes to deliver on customer care, and they reinvest in their business and themselves, and that's the reason why they get this much business. So, you're in this industry, Mike. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the kudos and likewise to you as well. And I think that it's, everything I say ditto to everything that you say. And, working with good professionals, not only just real estate agents, but, your lenders, your financial advisor, your stockbroker, and on, I think it's super important. And I think over time, working with those people, creating a relationship through a lifetime is going to be the key to everyone's success, and not just a fly-by-night type of person,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have about a minute left. So real quickly, just to review, there's all kinds of creative ways. Mike and I just went through 3 or 4 different things you could do. You could do bridge financing. You could leverage assets. You could. The last one I'll make real quick before we go is that if you're strategic, and if you know this, there's some investors and lenders. We do this. We have it. The ability for where I work at New American Funding is that if you get in the contract on a purchase and you have not sold your home, yet the minute you get in the contract, you get your house on the market right away. As long as you get in contract to sell your property, then we will release liabilities on your upcoming purchase, which is a big deal. So not all investors do that. So as we wrap up today, remember that. And the last thing I'll say is,
what do you think about? I know we have to wrap up, Joe.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, real quick, in 10, 15 seconds, on HELOC, like leveraging home equity? And maybe we could talk about this next time. But a lot of people have a home equity line in their property.
Right.
Maybe they leverage that into another property, and then once they sell the property, it's going to get paid off. So
no, that's a good point.
On that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. That should have been one of our talking points. So real quickly, so if you have the ability to put a home equity line on your property, or you already have it, that's another way to leverage assets temporarily, and you could always come back and pay it down or pay it off after you sell your property. So absolutely great point. That's another way to leverage assets for a potential purchase in advance.
And for everyone out there that has some equity in their house and has the ability to get a home equity line of credit, do it. Have it. If you feel like you can control yourself and not use it for buying a boat or something, ridiculous, if you feel like you can manage it, there's no reason why most people shouldn't go out and have a couple $100,000 home equity line in their house, just in case something like this comes up.
Yeah.
I think it's a smart thing to do, especially if you don't use it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, you never know. All right, we're going to have to cut out. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Again, just a reminder, Mike and I both would love to have you give us a review. Go to iTunes or RERadiolive.com and let us know what you think. And if you have any ideas or thoughts, we're always happy to hear from you. Until tomorrow, take care, and thanks again for tuning in.
See you guys.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.